Hi, this is Brian Weihmeir, agronomist with LG Seeds, coming from South Central Illinois here with this week's Agronomy Tip of the Week. One thing I want to talk about today is harvest moisture in soybeans. So far across the region we've had really nice above average temperatures, below average rainfall, which has allowed us to get out in the field and get a lot of corn harvested and even some soybeans harvested. The only challenge that we've had so far this year is our soybeans have been drying very, very quickly, and it's led to a lot of very dry soybeans as we've gotten into a lot of our varieties out in the field. And so just wanted to share with you some different statistics in regards to those soybeans and what those harvest losses would potentially be if we start harvesting beans below 13%. So as we start looking at moisture levels in soybeans, if we start getting into 12% soybeans, we're looking at roughly about a 1.14% potential yield reduction in soybeans. We start getting into 11%, we get to 2.25% yield reduction. 10% soybeans, 3.3%, 9% soybeans, 4.4% yield reduction, and 8%, 5.4% yield reduction. The reason we start seeing yield reduction in soybeans is we start taking a lot less moisture across the scale, which results in less weight. So just for an example, this soybean field I'm walking in, a lot of pods out here, looks like a lot of yield potential. Let's just say this field has potential for 80 bushel soybeans. And so if we were harvesting these beans at 8%, with that 5.4% yield reduction, we'd be looking at roughly about a 4.3 bushel yield reduction in this field, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you start looking at $1 per acre revenue with this field, you start looking at roughly about a $50 an acre loss in revenue. And so that's just the yield loss in regards to moisture. The other thing to consider too when these beans get really dry is the fact that our pods really start getting very brittle. It doesn't take a lot to start popping these pods open and the beans start falling out. So we do a lot of times too start seeing a lot more header loss. It becomes a lot more pronounced when you have an auger head as opposed to if you had a draper head, just because the auger heads, you kind of wrap those beans a little bit to get them into the feeder house, whereas a draper head's going to be a little more gentle. But when you do start harvesting some drier beans, keep in mind too, we're probably going to have a little bit more header loss to go along with those yield reductions in moisture. So probably the biggest question everybody's wondering is what do we do in regards to that? So obviously the biggest thing we can do is stop the combine, maybe wait for some better conditions. And that gets to be a little bit challenging and tough for a lot of us because, you know, when we are farming, you know, we're always taking gambles. We're always rolling the dice. But are we going to have better conditions in the future? Are we going to have dry field conditions? Are we going to have ample time to get those beans harvested? So a lot of times in that decision, it comes back a lot of times to the grower, his farming operation, and what makes sense for him. The other thing that we can do is come out into earlier parts in the morning or late parts in the evening to harvest beans when we get a little bit more morning dews and the sun goes down to get a little moisture in them. The challenge with that is a lot of times that time frame gets to be very tight. We don't necessarily have a lot of time to get a lot of beans harvested. The other thing that we can do too is come into fields that have a few more green stems. The elevator guys probably don't like that, but it is something that a lot of guys have done. And in this field here that I'm walking in, you can kind of see we've got still a few green leaves in this field. We've got a few green stems, and a lot of times that can help with that moisture as well, kind of buffer us out. The problem is when you get these green stems and you get these green leaves, a lot of times that is really tough for the combine to thresh them, and makes for a little bit challenging cutting conditions. But that is another way to do that as well. So really just kind of comes down to, you know, your operation, your preferences, and and what kind of risks that you want to take. But just wanted to keep everybody aware of those different harvesting losses when we start getting into drier beans, with the warmer weather we've had and the below average rainfall. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to your sales agronomist in your area. But until then, everyone have a safe harvest, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching.